Welcome back, everybody. It's the Spoony Bard coming at you with another top 5 underrated video game gems that I think deserve to be talked about. And remember, the underrated gems are the titles that, for whatever reason, were not critically received well, but were still good games. Games that maybe people passed on that were critically acclaimed, or just games that kind of got pushed under the radar and people have forgotten about over time. So let's go ahead and kick off this list with the title that I just recently finished up today. This is the original Nier. The very first Nier game for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 is among one of the most underrated video game titles to have ever been created. The main reason this title was overlooked was because of its gameplay. Its gameplay left much to be desired. It wasn't known for its combat. It didn't have the greatest combat. The idea behind it had some very original ideas, but it wasn't executed very well. The company Cavia was never known for being really great when developing gameplay. Drakengard had a very Dynasty Warrior-esque feel to it. So this is kind of why, Nier Automata came, Platinum Games did the combat, because Square Enix realized the potential that the story had, and this is where Nier shines the most. The characters are amazing, the story's great, the soundtrack is phenomenal, but one thing I want to say that shines Nier more than anything is its plot is not as simple as most games are. You have the protagonist in a Japanese RPG that goes out and saves the world, from the bad guy, and that's where Nier is. It's not as simple as who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, because there's not really one specific bad guy in Nier. It's kind of everybody doing their own things for their own reasons, being subject to their own fates, trying to live their lives to the fullest, be happiest, and survive in this world. And even the New Game Plus shines new perspective on some of the enemies, some of the different things that pop up in the story, and I'm not going to elaborate on what those are, but it does make you feel remorse for a lot of these enemies that you are facing in Nier. It's one of those games that just blends that so uniquely well, and it's worth playing for its story and characters alone. If you can get past that gameplay, definitely recommend picking up Nier. Nier does deserve to be played by a wider audience. Next up on this list is Chrono Cross. And I know what everybody's thinking. Really, Spoons? Really? Are you seriously saying that Chrono Cross is underrated? Well, yes. When you compare it to Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross gets a lot of hate. A lot of people were expecting Chrono Cross to be more in the veins of what Chrono Trigger was. And Chrono Trigger's story just wasn't a follow-up to what it was. It wasn't a follow-up to the characters and what people were expecting. What we got was a story that was set 20 years in the past and kind of focused on the repercussions of Chrono and his party's actions. This was something very unique to Chrono Cross. In a lot of ways, Chrono Cross almost completed Chrono Trigger's story because there was so much going on with the plot, and like I said, it was the repercussions. What happens when you change time? What happens to that time that wasn't supposed to exist? And this is where Chrono Cross's events come into place. And Chrono Cross's story is very convoluted at times and very hard to follow. It's one of those games that you gain a greater appreciation of its story the more times you play through it. Chrono Cross's replayability is very high for that reason, because the more you go back and play Chrono Cross, the more you start to understand where its story's coming from and what's going on, and a lot more events start to make sense. And Chrono Cross had some really good characters as well. And I feel like alone people consider Chrono Cross to be a very good game, but a lot of people disregard it as a shit title because it does not follow that same mold that Chrono Trigger did. And like I said, its actions, its storyline was meant to take a darker turn. That the developers meant it for that reason, because it was exploring a theme that if time travel really ever was prevalent, we could go and change events that were supposed to happen, how that would affect the flow of time. And it was a beautiful story in that aspect. Next up on this list, the next game I want to talk about is going to be Enslaved Odyssey to the West. Enslaved Odyssey to the West was one of the titles last generation that did not receive the love that it deserved. Enslaved Odyssey to the West was a retelling of the Chinese tale Odyssey to the West. And it took a very different approach to it in a post-apocalyptic world where vegetation had grown over the buildings. We had these people who were basically had these enslaver bands put on their head, and they were kind of subject to being slaves. People are disappearing for no apparent reason, just all over the country. And you have Trip and Monkey, the two main characters. Trip puts the band on Monkey to have him basically escort her home. This game is hit and miss with some people because some people don't like the what they call a full game escort mission. But I feel it's one of those titles that incorporated the escort mission very well into its gameplay. It wasn't frustrating, it wasn't irritating, it was molded very well into it. And Trip and Monkey were some very well-written characters. I thought I really did enjoy Trip and Monkey as personality. Andy Serkis and Lindsay Shaw did very great jobs bringing these characters to life. And that kind of being said too, its gameplay was interesting. It was different. It was fun. It was unique in a lot of ways. And it did have a lot of those platforming elements that Uncharted did, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And Enslaved Odyssey to the West was just kind of one of those titles that everybody passed upon, but like all Ninja Theory games, there's depth to its story, there's depth to its characters, and Ninja Theory is very good at telling stories, which is why I'm looking forward to playing Hellblade later this year. That is a game I will probably buy when it comes out and do a full-on review for. That is a title that I think needs a little bit more attention. The next game I want to bring up is Blue Dragon. Blue Dragon was a game on the Xbox 360 that was overlooked like Lost Odyssey. Again, Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon suffered from being Japanese games exclusive to the Xbox 360. Japan ignored them because it was on the Xbox 360 and they don't buy Microsoft things. People who played the Xbox 360 picked up the Xbox 360, didn't play RPGs on there. It's not what the system was known for, but this was one of those games that was very well done. And though its story wasn't groundbreaking, it wasn't something that hadn't been done before. It followed, a young trio of friends kind of caught in this adventure of saving the world, kind of caught up in that adventure, typical Japanese RPG style. But its world design was unique. There were a lot of different concepts that went into it. The formation of the shadows, and how the shadows kind of became a part of who they were. We had some of the different world designs. Some of the little areas you got to explore were very uniquely done. The characters were really good in themselves. The dialogue was funny, and it was really hilarious to listen to these characters interact. Maru was the comedian of the show. I absolutely adored a lot of the characters. It is a damn shame that a lot of the Blue Dragon follow-ups didn't capture that same feel as the original Blue Dragon. I wish that's kind of a game that they would make the other two not canon and go back and make a proper number 2 too, because I feel like it would be perfect. If Mistwalker's really working with Nintendo, Blue Dragon 2 would be a welcome asset on the Nintendo Switch. I'm just saying. That game, the more Japanese RPGs that can get, the more of people like me are going to flock to that system. And let's finish out this list by perhaps one of the most modern, underrated platformers, action adventure games that I feel just gets a lot of hate for no reason, and this is Kameo Elements of Power. Kameo Elements of Power was the last great game developed by Rare. And when I say last great game developed by Rare, that's pretty much because we never got anything after Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and there is Sea of Thieves coming out for the Xbox One, but we've yet to actually receive that, so we have no idea of what that game's going to be like. Now, a lot of people seem to have problems with Kameo Elements of Power, and a lot of people seem to gravitate to, well, Kameo's story isn't that great. Well, it's a platformer. Again, I've stated on this channel many times, I don't play a platformer simply for great story. This is something that can be absent in a platformer, and it just doesn't bother me. In Kameo, again, story's not great, but its gameplay I thought was really, really great. Granted, it hasn't aged well with the gameplay, which is something that's a bit of a shame. I was playing it the other day, and I'm just like, wow, how irritating some of these controls were. Or maybe it's just that I've gotten used to other things, and it took me a little bit to get used to them. But Kameo has the ability to be able to transform into these different beasts. Each of these different beasts have different abilities that they can do. One's like an armadillo, where you sit there and roll up into this ball, and it allows you to run over enemies, run up ramps, jump up ramps to get into higher places. She has a snow beast, where she's able to use these spikes to sit there and climb up these walls. She has this little pummelweed thing that can sit there and pummel different things. And the other ability that she has, she has some other, these kind of abilities just kind of go through, and it's almost like a puzzles in a way to kind of like get you past certain things, like a platformer was. It was more action driven, if anything, more like Star Fox Adventures in a way, rather than like a full-on platformer open world where you kind of went around and collected things. But Kameo Elements of Power was just a really fun game. I really enjoyed it. There was a sequel in the plans that unfortunately got canceled. That never came to fruition, which is sad because it was such a damn good game. If you haven't picked up Kameo, you want to. It's on the Xbox Live Market for your Xbox 360. I don't know if you can pick it up on Xbox One, but if you can, you should. It's included in the Rare Replay as well. So you don't really have an excuse not to play it, because the Rare Replay comes with some other amazing titles that you should pick up as well. So being able to play Kameo is an added bonus there. But this has been another 5 games that were underrated, that I think deserved more attention than what they got, or what they have, or are simply overlooked or don't get the praise that they deserve. If you guys want more of these videos, let me know, because I could talk for days about video games that deserved more praise than what they got. I will continue to make these lists if there's something you guys want to hear, but I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear, is this a series you want to continue? I want to hear what titles you guys think were underrated, because I can talk about this for days, but there are titles out there that I have not had a chance to play myself that deserve praise too, and I am sure. So leave those in the comment box below. Suggestions for it. Maybe some of these titles I will research and apply into my series, The Spoony Spotlight. Maybe these are titles I will put into a list as well, make a fan-made list. Let me know what you guys want to see. Be sure to leave those all down there in the comment box below. You guys have been watching The Spoony Bard. Be sure to hit subscribe there for me to keep up to date with all of my content. Also, follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are going to be down below in the description box. You guys have been watching The Spoony Bard, and most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. The Spoony Bard is checking out.